Trump, Redford, and the Crockery crash. This week, Trump goes regal, Redford takes his final bow, and Wedgwood drops the crockery. Welcome to Mark and Pete, two blokes with half an opinion. Now, here's our first story for this week.
Completely trumped. When someone holds all the aces and stacks the cards so everyone jumps, they shuffle about to suit many places, and then come up trumps. Yes, well, Donald Trump has enjoyed himself with pageantry and many elements of politics. Yes, President Donald Trump and First Lady Melania Trump have now departed the United Kingdom back to the United States. Well, they had much of a grand visit, and in fact, King Charles III commented that Donald Trump's personal commitment to finding solutions to some of the world's most intractable conflicts was a great thing for all of the world. Well, Mr. Pete, I ask you, do you think that this particular state visit from Donald Trump was worthwhile?
Well, it depends from whose perspective. I think it was worthwhile, certainly for Trump. He was vastly enjoying it. He looked absolutely massive. Either he ate too many royal puddings, maybe a bit of spotted dick there, or the British delicacies, or he was wearing extra layer of bulletproof vest. I'm not sure what it was, but he was looking very large, a bit like the Penguin in the Batman series. But I think it was worthwhile for him, certainly. He was able to appear very regal himself. He dominated proceedings, and he seems to have got a very taken a step forward in terms of trading relationship with Britain, and America's coming out very well, it seems, on that. So it's all very good from his point of view. From the British point of view, even though Keir Starmer was outshone by Donald Trump and may took a bit of a fall in his grasp on politics, and
Yes.
particularly his grasp on the nationalist uprising in Britain. There was a big demonstration in London very recently about against his policies. He looked very weak with Trump's comment on that, and the King meeting with Trump was also it's seemingly outshone by Trump, I think. I mean, some people commenting that Trump was a bit rude to him,
Oh,
in that he
yes.
walked on ahead of him to talk to one of the
Yes.
soldiers. But that's one of Trump's classic moves, isn't it? I talk with the common man, and talking to a
Yes.
soldier rather than the king. That's the way I think. All in all, Trump comes out. Obviously vastly enjoyed it. He seemed to be grinning the entire time and keeps going on about it in press conferences afterwards. But as a diplomatic effort, it seems to be very successful. Makes him look good in the eyes of the rest of the world with all the pageantry. That he's been taken seriously. And from the British point of view, well, they may have had their stars, the king and the prime minister, diminished a bit by Trump's Trump being a bigger star.
Well,
But
it is.
but just one final comment on that before I have at you. One thing is, it means because they were pandering to him, if you like, and they had him at Wimbledon, so there wouldn't be mass demonstrations as there would have been in Buckingham Palace. I imagine that was the decision. It was pretty much indoors and out of sight, all these meetings. What it does is it elevates them, or keeps in mind the special relationship in Trump's mind. So in terms of furthering the causes of Britain, especially Britain's business relationships with America, it was a smart move from Britain as well. So I think it's as close to as a win-win as can be expected.
Well, I think it's fair to say that let's look at it from the point of view of the United Kingdom. It pulled out all of the stops when it came to pageantry. I
Yeah,
mean, it
sure.
went to literally military precision. Everything was
Yeah.
very well orchestrated. Yes, there was, unfortunately, because of the weather, there wasn't the United flyovers, which they had planned. But that's one of those things you accept. But everything else was perfect. What I think was interesting as well was the King's speech. You may know that obviously Donald Trump seemed to sort of enjoy himself, relishing in this lavish dinner for over 160 guests in Windsor Castle.
Mhm.
Now, when you think about this, a state visit of this standing is extremely rare. So, without any doubt, they literally pulled out the red carpet on every level. So, I think that from that side, some people probably felt that maybe the United Kingdom went a bit too far. It was a bit too subservient to the man that we all know as Donald Trump. But either way, what I do find interesting about this visit is that everyone was talking about Donald Trump, when really the whole point about this was about the United States and the United Kingdom. It's
Yes.
about a state visit. He's really a representative, but he was very much about the Donald Trump show. And that's why I think that he looked so gleefully on at almost everything. He was grinning almost at every point throughout the ceremonies. But here's the thing, now that it's done, now that it's over, do you think that this will put, somebody like Keir Starmer in a better standing, or is it just more of a pause that it gave him a little bit of a limelight, and really the reality is he's still in trouble?
I think he's still in trouble. Yeah, I mean, I think it didn't do him any harm. People are pointing out that Donald Trump made him look very silly because of his almost subservient attitude to Trump. But the fact that he was there with Trump, you know, shows him in a good light. He's there strutting about on the world stage, if you like, because he's next to Trump, and he's seen after the king, and it puts people in their mind he's next to royalty. So it wasn't a bad thing for him, despite he's not performing very well. But there's really nothing to be done about his standing with the British people, apart from a complete change around, a volte face, you're walking in one direction, you go in the other direction. You say, "I'm sorry, have been supporting these left-wing causes. Now I'm right-wing." Oh, it has to be that big a deal, and not just saying he has to doing it, because he's virtually done that before. Keir Starmer. He said, "Oh, I'm going to clamp down on the gangs sending the people across on boats to illegally enter Britain." Nothing was done.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing. In fact, more people came across than before. So, he's got to act unless he actually does something dramatic. And over the years on our show, Mark, I've said this: if a prime minister like Winston Churchill could suddenly grasp the moment and do something brave and something decisive. He came into power and I know took us into war with Germany and ruined the country financially, but generally regarded that we did the right thing morally. Well, what we're looking for now is for Keir Starmer to just be brave and do the right thing morally.
Yeah. Well,
I
now
think this may not happen.
here's another aspect to this, because state visits are often like really much a sort of a soft power diplomacy.
Yes.
They use the royal hospitality to build relationships, but then opens up to the point about trade. And one of the things that did get highlighted, I thought it could have been a bit more. I think it put more emphasis on the substance, but there we go, which is around technology firms investing in the United Kingdom. So, for example, Apple, Microsoft, OpenAI, and so on, about signing deals which were at the time discussed as being, hundreds of billions of dollars over periods of time. So, in some ways, maybe that's the payoff, that effectively there may be more investment in this country from big firms from the United States. I will say that when really the devil's in the detail here, because at the end of the day, when you think about some of those big technology firms, they rely on not just infrastructure being available, Keir Starmer.
Yes.
You
Mm.
also need to ensure that you've got the talent available so that they can be employed by those firms. And also that, when it comes to tax, yes, you remember that nice little word, you've also got to incentivize those businesses. So ironically, really the United States was coming to the table with something, but really Keir Starmer now has an opportunity. I'm not sure whether it's in his makeup to really understand what needs to happen to make it be real. And that's the thing that worries me, because let's be honest, the economy is not great. He is being Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves under tremendous pressure to fill in a gap in the budget, and one of the ways of doing that is to invest and to entice businesses. I don't think that strategically we're quite there yet. So, the opportunity is there, but, is Starmer the right man to really sort of see us through?
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, it remains to be seen. I don't like to preempt these things, but I think not.
No,
He's shown no sign of it yet. The question is, who is the right man? Who is the right person for this
quite.
role? And that's a decision I think the public will be making over the
Is that
next
is that
few months.
possibly a man a little bit more associated with Donald Trump who wasn't there?
Yeah, well,
We
there were
shall see.
two. The thing is, I'll make just a suggestion here that Um, this would seem a strange thing, but Ben Habib, I think, is more in line with what the public actually want to happen on immigration, for example.
Yes,
Who started the Advance Party because, in his words, Nigel Farage has sold out,
there you
and
go.
and so is Nigel Farage has UKIP 3.0, is it now? Because he'd be at UKIP. He was head of then Brexit Party, now Reform UK. But people feel that he just is just not strong enough on immigration. So who will be next? Will it be Nigel Farage? More than likely, but there could be a bigger twist. And I said the thing that I would say is um, there is someone who sort of associated with Donald Trump, but more with Elon Musk, who, if he stepped into politics, could make a big difference. And that's Stephen Lennox, isn't it?
Mhm,
That's the real name of Tommy Robinson. He's saying
mhm.
he's not going to do it. He's sticking to journalism. But anyway, I say
That
that if he did actually step into politics, not necessarily trying to become an MP, just leading a party, he could make a
mm,
huge difference. But yep, there's lots to
yep.
play for. And we were talking about the result of Trump's visit. Well, I think that only emboldens those who are very Trumpian in their approach, like Tommy Robinson and Ben Habib of the Advance Party, and a little bit his mate Nigel Farage.
Well, let's move on to a sad story here, and this is all about the final Sundance. An actor who becomes a Hollywood legend, where his name is an illuminating sign. Even when the sun goes down, his star will always shine.
Yeah,
Yes, well,
yeah.
we have seen that unfortunately Robert Redford, who has died at the age of 89, appeared in more than 50 Hollywood films. He won an Oscar as a director. He became a champion of independent films, founding his annual Sundance Films Festival, mainly to showcase actors' works throughout the world. Well, Mr. Pete, I must ask you, it's sad that somebody as great as Robert Redford has passed on, but he was a very good actor and he was also a tremendous director. But there was a couple of things that he really stood for, and really he was very much at odds with some of the things going on in Hollywood. What's your favorite film from Robert Redford? Let's start with that.
Well, I'm a bit of a fan of the classics. My favourite is The Sting, which
Oh,
is
yes. Yes, very
well
good.
that okay. That's not exactly a controversial choice because he won an Oscar for that, didn't he? Or at least the film won an Oscar.
The film
So
won the Oscar. He
yeah,
personally didn't know.
yeah. But it was sort of an attempt to replay the chemistry between uh, the two stars in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Um, and they didn't give an Oscar that time, so I thought maybe they felt they had to in 1973, 4 years later. But I think it was a better movie. It was a stronger movie, uh,
A
tight,
stronger plot
witty,
as well. Yeah.
strong plot, very witty script, and lots of caper movies since have tried to recapture. And some scenes seem to be straight copies of what they did there. So yeah, I think that's his best movie, and his charm was on full blast throughout.
Yes. What's interesting is he was actually born Charles. Yes, it is
Oh,
Charles
really? I
Robert
didn't know
Redford.
this.
Yes,
Mm,
well, there you go. Charles Robert Redford Jr. was born in Santa Monica, California, on the 18th of August, 1936. And he was the son of a milkman who later became an accountant with Standard Oil. Now, at
there you
school,
go.
he became part of a street gang and was arrested for borrowing an automobile that had stolen jewelry in its trunk.
Oh,
Yes.
dear.
Well, there you go.
Well done.
But the
Yeah.
fact is that he was often noted, and he was often criticised, many for just being, sort of somebody who was more for his good looks rather than his acting ability. But I think through time he proved his worth. I mean, he'd been in films with many people, like as you say, Paul Newman. There was Jane Fonda and many other movies. What I do think about him is that if I was to say one of the favorite films was All the President's Men.
Yep, yep, another great
And
film.
as
Yeah,
we all know, that this was obviously the Watergate scenario, but
yeah.
he actually bought the rights to that film to actually make it. And to me, he was also counted with a very good actor, Dustin Hoffman.
Yeah.
And when you get the right actors, remember, there are no car chases in this. There's no sci-fi bits. This is
No,
all
no,
about a
shame.
good plot and a good
Yes.
movie, very well made. And that to me was an example of where I think he really came into his own.
Well,
I
yeah.
mean, yeah.
Oh, I just wanted to comment on his, acting style because one of the things that people often do wrong, I think, in movies is they try and act, whereas, any sort of sign of acting comes across as false. Yeah, you do less is more in movie acting. Various different, movie actors have commented on that, and how you have to be still. But it was Michael Caine I heard comment on it, saying when you're movie acting as opposed to the stage, you try and hold your face as still as possible and just let the emotion come through, and then it works. So, and Robert Redford was like that. I mean, often his face, you just look at, is he acting? He's just his face is immobile, and yet you get the emotion across. The greatest scene that I remember just showing this is from one of the films you mentioned, from Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. If people want to look it up to find the clip, it's when they're about to jump off a cliff, and the Sundance Kid, who is Robert Redford's character, who is this Butch, pun intended, hard guy, is scared of swimming, so he won't jump off of the cliff into the river. And the way that plays through to them eventually jump off the cliff, with him virtually his face virtually immobile, but you get that he's scared. Brilliant acting.
Oh, yes. Well, here we go. Here's the other side of his business because in the early 1980s, he went on to do his directorial debut, and that was with Ordinary People, a study of the collapse of a middle class family after the death of one of their sons. And he won an Oscar. It was his actually, in fact, ironically, his only Oscar. But nevertheless, it did show you that, this isn't just somebody who was in front of the screen, he was also able to orchestrate. And I think transitioning, there are very few people who can go and do both acting well and directing at a high level. It might seem simple, but when you think of the history of Hollywood, or even filmmaking generally, to be able to master both arts is not an easy thing to do. Of course, obviously he set up his Sundance Film Festival, which I think in itself was, a great homage to good filmmaking. And to me, I think that he really sort of sets out his stall on what it means to be an independent filmmaker. Now, he was a little bit concerned towards the end of his career about the way that Hollywood was going, and that was something that again he championed for independent filmmakers, and the difficulties with the challenge of obviously online streaming, because obviously with new types of platforms like Netflix and others, it was a challenge to the traditional ways in which Hollywood used to sort of release films. So to me, I think that he will be a name that I think that people will remember for many years.
Mm.
Well, let's move on to a different story. Now, this one is very much about elite type of manufacturing. It's about finely produced pottery is used every day, where pieces are crafted in many a way, but whether used practically or for display, it's just a baked lump of mouldy clay. Yes. And the
Yes.
fact of the matter is that when you actually look at some of the elite ceramics in this world, Wedgwood is one of those that stands out as being a great brand. Unfortunately, times have changed, and the clay is no longer quite so much in demand. In fact, Wedgwood has now paused its production in Staffordshire for many, many months, and in fact, actually even put some of its employees, a large percentage, on temporary leave. Mr. Pete, I ask you, first of all, do you have any Wedgwood? And is this type of product now something that really appeals to people today?
No, I don't have any Wedgwood. I do have a rather posh dinner set of plates that I've inherited from some. It's come to my family somewhere from
A
another
different
family.
generation.
Yeah, and
Yes.
let me tell you where it is. It's in a cupboard under the sink. It's
Ah,
it's interesting, isn't it, that we don't. I mean, it used to be. I mean, back in the day, you and I, go back to many centuries ago.
to the
So
18th
so
century when
old,
Josiah Wedgwood
but
was around.
yeah, that's right. But the thing is that it used to
Yes.
be the case until a generation ago, maybe, that you would have in your living room or maybe your dining room, if you had such a thing, a display cabinet which had
Oh, yes.
crockery in it, and your posh crockery would be in there. Maybe you wouldn't use it every day, maybe just at big dinners, maybe just at Christmas and Easter you used it, but still it would be, and it would be there on display in between, and that just isn't there anymore. The chief display is a big screen, maybe a smart television, that sort of thing, but you don't have that anymore, and even in I'm thinking I don't often go to stay in hotels, but when I do, I don't see any display cabinets with posh crockery there. So,
No.
it just isn't part of our culture anymore. So I'm not surprised that they're not. I mean, the people who want it have already got it. They're
Yes.
not selling new stuff. That's how I see this as changed. And if am I right in saying that it's not just they were bought up by someone a
Yes,
few
they
years
were
ago,
they were actually are now owned by Fiskars Group, who
right?
effectively control the operation. Yes, because Wedgwood did actually go into administration a few years ago, and so they
So
were
when they
saved.
close, sorry, you are a business expert here. You've got your finger on the pulse. Tell me when they're in trouble. It's just the Wedgwood part of this group that's in trouble, not the
Yes,
group as a whole.
correct.
So they could, in order to keep the bottom line healthy, get rid of Wedgwood altogether.
They could. The one thing which has always been a big debate, not just by the current owners, but basically by the industry. Wedgwood is a long established name. So Josiah Wedgwood, who set it all
Mm,
up in the 18th century, was a pioneer basically in pottery. He would typically produce designs, really high end bespoke designs, crafted with bone china pieces as well as clay pottery and many other types of pottery. But the point is that those skilled workers that are required, as well as the techniques that they pioneered, are probably not so much in demand to the today as it once was 100 years ago, 50 years ago. But the point here is that what you've got is a craft, and should some crafts just be let go, or are we very sentimental about brands such as Wedgwood? Now, it was originally a British brand, and that's one that would pioneer and innovate across the world.
mm.
Whereas today, it's really a much scaled back operation. So there's an argument to say keep it because there's a bit of nostalgia, and in
Yeah,
some cases, for very, very exclusive types of occasions, dare I say, even pageantry and many other things. Who knows what was there on the great banquet when Donald Trump came? He might have had some Wedgwood there in the background, or
mm,
even in front of him. But the fact of the matter is, I believe that saving brands is important because the products come and go. And I could see that if maybe what they need as the owners is to reinvent the brand. It seems to have gone in and stuck to its traditional heritage, and
Yeah,
there's nothing
yeah.
wrong with that, and it mustn't go too far away.
Yes,
But to me, it needs to sort of develop new
yeah,
product
yeah, so,
lines to be in
sure. I
line with
mean,
what people
the
need.
the thing is, particularly in Britain, we love our sentimental attachment to brands. But if you take the biggest market for most things, America, they love a bit of British snobbery as much as we do. So it could be, I mean, if they want to rethink what they're doing, you can have still make special limited lines of their really posh stuff, if you like. Make them to order, maybe would be a way of protecting your bottom line, and but put your name to mass produced products as well. You know, and you say, well, it'll be watery down. Well, the thing is, people won't see it like that. They'll know. Make it quite obvious that it's not the actual uh,
No.
not the actual product. I give you an example from more obvious from the car industry. This is done. You know, you get
Mm.
your top of the range Mercedes Maybach posh car. You get the top of the range sports cars, but they also sell something that a small saloon car runabout that or hatchback with their A series. And no, well, you buy a Mercedes, you've got the top of the range one that keeps you interested, and the same is true of other brands. Toyota make a fast sports car. You're not confused between the two, you know, and I suppose the classic of this thing is Alfa Romeo. You know, it's a sports car, a racing car brand, and yet most people buy a hatchback version of it. So, if you take that and put that into the crockery world branding, yeah, they should license out their brand to
Well,
mass manufacturers. Look,
absolutely.
that's just a way of keeping it alive. It is a shame, as you say, to lose brands, and I guess you could sell the brand, but using the car illustration, you might end up like MG and have some Chinese hatchback knockoffs with your brand on them. That wouldn't be good.
Well, the irony here is that the actual organisation Wedgwood itself and the marketing manager at the Staffordshire Chambers of Commerce has said that they are concerned about the drop off in demand. But what was interesting is Wedgwood has huge global demand in areas including China.
There you go.
Ironically,
That's ironic. Yeah.
but the thing here is if the demand is slowing, and obviously there are increasing costs, then it's a concern. But I guess that this is where, again, what we're really saying is they need to reinvent themselves. They need to think to be able to, keep the company going. We must emphasize that this is a temporary measure on their
Oh
part.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
either way, really, maybe there's some signals here in the market that
Yeah.
saying it's time to change. Well, from my side, I mean, look, what we've seen really is sort of cracks in international relationships. we've
Oh, I
seen
see. Yeah. This is a
we've
summary.
seen
Yes. Yeah.
cracks in the Hollywood legendary status at the moment, and obviously
Yeah.
cracks in in our
Cracks in the pottery.
cutlery.
Yeah.
Cracks
Cracks
in
in
the
the pottery.
cutlery and
Yeah. I
pottery
mean,
everywhere.
everything. Just to give a sort of Christian perspective, as we like to do, Matthew chapter 6, verse 19, which talks about storing up treasures in heaven, not on earth. Earthly treasures always fade. We just have to be realistic about it. But we can make sure that that we're acting in a good and righteous manner, because it's really about integrity and legacy. The same could be true of all our three topics today. If people bear that in mind, then there's always a way forward. Well, that's it for Mark and Pete for this week. Let us know what you think. All you have to do is make sure you're subscribed. If you go to markandpete.com, it'll take you through to the Spreaker podcasting site where we first upload our podcast to. So you get the original there, and underneath the episode, you can leave a comment on this. And in fact, every episode, we'd love it if you did. But that's it for this week. Thanks very much for listening. Catch you next time.